The day has begun. It's an overcast sky made of man-made clouds.
Which we have the fortune of breathing or not.
All the more the need for healthy practices and healing practices.
And the evolution of physical health.
The battle to maintain health amidst a toxic world.
And not just to maintain, but to elevate, to move even past your current state of health into
Excellence. A fantasy life, achieving, growing, understanding and appreciating,
and living moment to moment in exquisite beauty.
My heart yearns every day for such peace.
I imagine a little stone cottage in a meadow.
Dew in the grass.
The slightest stream of smoke wisping up from the chimney.
Is that the smell of cookies?
The smell of the hearth. The hearth. But right next to it is something stirring, something simmering. A broth, a stew, warmth.
We don't need that much to survive. We just need sufficient amount to thrive.
To not have to struggle.
And yet it's the first chakra directive.
That chakra speaking to us of survival. Always coming to us with survival. How do I survive? How do I make my life able to achieve? How am I able to gather the goods that I need to help not only myself, but my family and my loved ones to survive?
And thrive.
Thriving moves up a chakra or two. But it is the goal, and it's what we aspire to, always.
The fifth chakra opens up a place of prayer where the heart speaks upward into this higher realm.
And not just the heart, but the sound of your own voice, the speaking or the singing or the praying or the calling out.
Sometimes I feel like a little boy, longing for softness. I am innocent like some deer, some fawn in the forest. This is what I am. I am alert to danger because I'm well accustomed to peace and gentleness. And the light, it shines through the limbs of the trees that protect me. I feel the purpose. I'm lifted up into this appreciation of life.
And all is well, and feels safe and loving.
Can the world learn this? How many years will it take? When we all can rest, trusting in our authorities, governments, in the people that are surrounding us. We have all found the way, sharing with one another, healing one another, listening, empathizing, finding solutions.
Creating beauty, moment to moment.
Forgiving, being forgiven, being washed clean from where we became dirty and bruised in the battle to survive. If we could build a society where the things that we're striven for,
where that which we most deeply seek is our everyday action and moment-to-moment interaction with each other. Gentleness, kindness, charitable acts.
Let money go. It's just a green river. Let our goals and accomplishments be what strive or cause us to strive. It is our gift to the world. These things that we do, these things that we love, share those. It's a new world now. A world where we share to the internet. The children are growing. They're mastering things sooner. It is the indigo children. They're brighter now. We have passed on the knowledge. The internet has taken over as information giver. All you need to do is seek, and you shall receive.
And the cumulative knowledge of all the world now rests at our fingertips.
The goal has no end in sight. And yet, there are patterns that become a parent. Social gatherings. People in conversation.
Laughter rippling.
Humor keeps all things light. For humor is kindness. It's gentle with that which we might yell at. To stop war, to stop prejudice, to stop hurting one another.
To elevate not just yourself, but everyone around you.
Embrace, hold, group hug, group goal, group mind connected oneness. We've all seen the vision.
And from that group goal and one-mindedness, if we're very lucky, begins a rhythm, something that moves within that rhythm. That begins to spin and to grow. And like a wave, like a ripple, spread out to larger and larger communities and environments and populace.
Strategies will be born, ideas, how to accomplish certain things. Efficiency. It is God trying to be born into the world, manifesting as a structure, through structures.
And as the ultimate collaboration of all. Of all that is.
Suzee, speak to us about patterns of behavior that we become comfortable with, and yet might not be for our highest good.
I was thinking, actually, this morning, as I do often, about this topic of the behaviors that we have or the choices that we make on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. And those choices that we make may at that moment feel right to us, might feel like the thing to do, the choice to make. This is what's right, this is what makes sense. But what are those choices? What informs those choices? What makes us decide to do what we do? Where's the information coming from? Is it historical? Is it ancestral? Is it environmental? Is it behavioral? What informs the decisions that we make? And as I thought about it, I thought we get into habits and ways of being where choice becomes automatic. It's like, okay, something is said, and then the thing that you respond with can be almost an automatic response, maybe not well thought out. And it might not be in your highest interest to make those choices, but I think we make choices based on our comfort zone. What is our comfort zone?
Well, comfort is feeling safe and separate, protected. I mean, when your heart is wide open and you've been wounded, so like we all have the skin disease. We all have the skin disease of raw. We have no skin. In fact, the air blows over us and we're already hurting. So you walk up to somebody and go, "Hey, John, boy, you look funny today." "Oh my God, what? Something wrong with my looks?" We're so sensitive.
This is true.
So maybe what we do is we walk around in life feeling or acting gruff because we're protecting ourselves from the hurt that would come from other people's gruffness, our distrust of other people.
And yet, the reactionary chain would benefit by being, challenged.
There's that too. So whether you trust yourself and move forward with a thought, or whether you hold it back and let it dissolve into where it came from, which is what? In reaction to what reality's giving you on a day-to-day basis, moment to moment?
But that begs the question, you said what reality is given to you or is giving to you in the moment. Reality is subjective. It's utterly subjective based on those things that I talked about earlier, historical, ancestral, environmental, behavioral, those words, those things that create our experience and therefore shape our way of looking at things or our way of perceiving things. So reality is subjective, as is perception, utterly subjective.
Oh, I'm not liking it somehow. Oh, it's just subjective, so we can just take it abstractly, Oh, no, but too late, I already got triggered. So, you know what I mean? Reality is going to trigger us. Why? Because we have so many dimensions to our being that a person has to communicate and connect on all of those levels simultaneously somehow. Now, if you don't, if you're passive aggressive, then there might be a backlash kind of reaction like, did you really mean what you said, or were you flattering me in order to get something, or did you just insult me, or what happened there? Or what feels funny about what you're saying, or what you're up to? Because here's my point. It's easy to be enlightened and in peace, in our in a meditative moment and hanging out with our friends that we trust. Okay, we can have these moments of sublime bliss. But welcome to the rest of the universe and the world, where things are not as peaceful as they are when we're in our little cave with our special friends, feeling good and clean and
Validated on every level.
right.
Oh no, you're not fat. You're just accepting all that life is offering you.
Yes, and you're plump, you're full of it. You're so used to accepting the beauty of life. It's true. We could probably worm our way through with an algorithm that allows us to perceive the universe always in some light of blessing. But either we see the blessing in the moment, or we're looking ahead and anticipating a blessing coming out of all difficulties that arise.
Or anticipating a curse coming out of all things that arise.
Yep. See, so now we're back to the subjective deal.
We're back to the subjective deal, and we're back to where we allow our thoughts to go, really. And that is ultimate choice. Where do we allow our thoughts to go? I think of that, I think it's the quote that's like, don't believe everything you think, which is kind of humorous.
Right. Byron Katie probably was the one promulgating that thought, because she, of course, teaches that if you just look at what thoughts arise and challenge them, you can kind of dismantle them right there on the spot. And then, or at least not, so that you're not bound by them.
Right. Meaning the next step after perceiving something having been said a certain way in a certain style, the next step being, okay, now what do I do with that information? Well, I guess I react.
Yeah. So you walk out the door and you just realize that the world was an awful place, right? And that's your thought. Man, the world's a horrible place to exist. So you walk out the door and you're on your way home, and now you're walking down the street with your eyes shifting back and forth from side to side, looking at people, anticipating ugliness everywhere you go. And simultaneously, somebody else comes out the door right after you, and they just got done having a conversation where they feel warm and accepted and loved, and wow, I can't believe I just got that job. Maybe she's thinking. And now she sees people walking down the street, and she just feels like, oh gosh, there's somebody who looks like they're really poor. I wish I could give them, so she's got all these loving feelings towards everything. So there we have two different worlds painted, all based on a thought that arose and was believed in or accepted as true.
All our own subjective reality, as it were.
Right. So which reality would you choose? The mean, ugly, vicious world of...
Oh, yes, definitely.
Not every movie out there, see, we got to get rid of that word every, or learn to use it in context without exaggeration, or as an exaggerative term, unless we truly mean to exaggerate. Go for it, Susie.
There are some movies out there, okay, take it from there,
that it's all violent. It's all a struggle, all this evil in the world, the battle between good and evil.
Well, what it comes right down to, once again, is that I was about to use the word rudimentary, and it's not rudimentary, but that initial chakra sensibility of survival. So the movies that we see constantly are working through a theme of survival, really. And we see it played out again and again and again and again and again and again.
Right. I played at a church the other day, a Lutheran church out in Beaverton, yeah, Hillsboro. And the minister came to me afterwards, going, well, hey, what'd you think? And I told him I'd like to comment or a thing that he had read about Martin Luther King had quoted. And it was just somehow in the struggle of it all and the noble attempts to live with a sense of dignity and honor. And I said to him, I said, I have been dirtied by television and the media. I have been
As I watch the
made
world,
dirty.
everybody
And, of course,
going
that
to
sounds
fulfill
ugly.
their needs.
I don't like the sound of that, but that was true. All I've seen is violence. All
Wonder
of
if I can
the
flip the
masculine
thing
movies
over.
that I like, are all violent and battles of power and the victims of those with more power that use that power to pick on the little weak ones.
Maybe a better terminology would be, for example, a loss of innocence. You get the images in your head. That's why sometimes I see things, I can tell an image is about to happen. It's like, I don't want that in my head. I cover my ears, close my eyes, and go, nah, because I don't want that sticking in my head. It's the loss of innocence, because once you've seen it, and I can think of images that I've seen on television, one in particular, and I don't even really want to talk about it.
You're right.
But from 20 years ago, and at a moment's notice, boom, I can pull that image up, and it's like, in my own head, I want to go, nah, don't look at that, don't think about that, blah 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 blah, because it's an unpleasant visual in my head, and it exists nowhere.
Right. I had similar kind of thinking. I noticed that my mind will sometimes fantasize just stuff like that you're seeing on TV or the movies. And I think, oh my God, it's just horrific thinking. It's violent. Is
that in reaction to something?
No.
It's just for kicks?
Yeah. Like, for instance, I was thinking that, maybe other people go through this too, and I'm not the only one. But I can just be sitting and then all of a sudden be in a car wreck in my mind, or having a cop pull me over in my mind, and then everything going wrong and things get real ugly. Those things go through my mind. I always feel like some disaster is about to occur.
I remember hearing something from Brene Brown talking about that, and she was doing a series of discussions about vulnerability, and it had to do with, we feel vulnerable, and so in those moments, the most catastrophic thoughts come up into our minds when we're feeling vulnerable. That it's just like, at that moment, what's the worst thing that could happen, or the worst piece of news that you could get? And it's a way of pushing back the vulnerability.
Well, yeah, that's right. Because, and here's an example. When you think about your children.
Right, exactly.
Oh my God, the worst imaginable thought can happen out of the blue. You're just in a picnic and it's just all beautiful and kids are playing out, and then something horrific happens.
Yeah, she talks about how she was coming home from a Friday night date with her husband, and they've had this lovely evening, and somehow in the course of the evening, their favorite college sweetheart song came on, and they've just had this amazing evening. And as they're walking back into the house where their kids have been looked after for the evening, she says to her husband, "What if someone jumped out of the bushes right now as we're walking up to the house, and they killed us right on the lawn, and then what would we do with the children?" And he's kind of like, honey, do we have to talk about this right now? But that was what was going through her head, is, what if the worst possible thing happened right now? I've got to prepare for what we would do with the kids. So it's, it's somehow it's all tied together, that vulnerability, that innate sense of fear, our will to survive, how we can ensure our own survival, all of that.
And that brings us full circle to what you were talking about, which was patterns of behavior that we get into that feel comfortable to us, or we hold on to them. Why? Because we feel safe. And how to change these patterns to be able to how to let them go or reprogram ourselves so that we're not walking down the street anticipating hell and therefore creating hell by being hypersensitive and defensive and angry and just looking for an excuse to yell at somebody. Poor little bum on the street with his little sign, even 25 cents will do, and you're like, get a job. No, I always feel, I use the word guilty, but it's like, dude, you probably have more money in your pocket than I do. But here, I think I have. You got a couple of quarters, maybe?
However, you're in a warm car, perhaps, let's say.
Right.
And he's, sitting out in the rain
Yeah.
with a cardboard sign that's quickly wilting.
And you're mouthing to him, I'm sorry. No money. Or look the other way.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now you're being a naughty boy.
Yeah, but look, I'm laughing, right? So
That's right.
It feels better than crying.
Well, and once
Although I am
again,
crying too, I'm
the
laughing so hard.
entire thing is a fantasy that's occurring in your head that you're being amused by. Your own storytelling that's happening right in between your ears.
Yeah. I don't need nobody in my life. I just got my stories. I can keep myself company. Okay, well, look. Okay, so we're full circle. We're giving up those patterns. Those patterns.
Well, they might not be so easy to give up. Here, let me give you a couple of silly examples.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we had a huge table because there were, if everybody was home, there were 11 of us sitting around the dinner table eating, and that's provided nobody brought any friends. So we had a gigantic grain elevator table that we would all sit around. And but aside from that, this huge table, usually during the day at one end of the table, there was always like a pile of papers, right? And these were, my parents', business papers or bills or things like that always had to be dealt with. Or on the kitchen countertops, there might be, a pile of bills. And it was always there, and it always had to be cleaned up before we would, could have a meal around the table, which would occur really 3 times a day, or at least twice. I mean, we were always there. And as I grew up and got into college and beyond, and even now, piles of papers. And there they are. Now, do I just feel comfortable with them? Does it feel safe to me to have a pile of papers? Because, I look at it and go, that's really not very attractive to have a pile of papers in the kitchen. But there it seems to be. Is that an acquired a safety mechanism? And I realize that that's like a little cheap and cheesy example, but it is quick to talk about.
Yeah. And I don't want the stuff on the table.
But, okay, so let me finish the part of that.
Okay.
So where did my mom acquire that habit of having the papers? Was it too much clutter in the life? Because she talked about when she was, newly married, and it was, during the Dust Bowl years in the 30s, and everything was dry as could be. And she said company would come over to their house, and she would be cleaning the house while company was there because it was so important to her to dust all the furniture and have it all clean and not a thing out of place.
I do that very one right there.
Right. So she would always do that. And here it is, dry and dusty, and the wind is howling through the plains, the prairie. And so company is there, and she's cleaning right in the middle of it. So she had that habit, and she grew up in a very clean and tidy household, Victorian, gigantic Victorian house with actually, hired hands, and there was always a maid and a tailor there. And so, a huge household, but it was always spick and span. And so she was carrying on that tradition. And then by the time I rolled around, maybe there was just too much going on. I don't know. But there is a certain safety in having a little bit extra around. Or another way I look at it is I used to think, well, I always need to have a little bit of sin in my life, because if there's a little sin, well, then, then it's too early to die because I got to figure it out first. Something along those lines.
Yeah, Suzee. Well, okay. Patterns of behavior. Like I'm watching somebody right now that is really uptight, in one of the other studios, and I'm scared for the equipment because seems pushing the limit of safety of aggressive behavior to the limit. And you mess around with the electronic equipment and you hit it or oops, bang it or you jerk it around. It's just not a good thing. Which then brings to mind that these behaviors that we have with other people can be problem producing until we learn a little more about each other. Yeah, maybe it takes a long time to work through the dirtiness that we've gotten from TV and from our childhood. These lessons maybe that we learned, that when we get vulnerable, we become defensive.
I think it's hard to change the patterns because most of the time we don't even know the patterns exist.
Yeah, your best idea would be, or clue would be when there's negative things happening. Feelings arising. And what's required then is to be able to know how to meditate or know how to process this kind of moment. Oh, negative feelings, meditate, process. What is it? Follow it through, come to understand it. This may take time. Besides, you got to chop wood, carry water. And, we'll have to deal with this later on. So it becomes a few weeks where you got to learn something. Listening and growing. I really feel the need to let it go.
Okay, there's Dan, walking through the Mexican border on his way to get some dental work done. Sorry about the cam not being steady. We're on the sidewalk here.
listening to KBOO Radio. I'm Dan. Give us a call if you'd like. Go to us online. Let's talk about some things. Suzee, talk to me.
I'm just loving the music that you were just playing.
It's from an album called Lucid Dreaming.
Lucid dreaming. It's kind of what we've been doing today.
Yep.
A little bit. Lucid dreaming.
Yeah, I hear the message says, don't try to control your thoughts. Just let it go down that direction that it wants to go. Okay, might be a little foo-foo, a little woo-woo. But how many times a day do your thoughts take you down a calm and quiet path where all the noises are birds and bugs and creatures moving through the forest floor?
And I think music is the great elixir that can lead us down that path because it touches something in us that we can't even really define many times.
It's like if you were an alien that came to Earth and you wonder what languages people speak. You may think that music is a language because it's talking about how you feel. It's a feeling. I feel you. I feel your rhythm.
And it can shift you from perhaps, let's say, since we've been talking about it, that survival state into the second chakra, which is a much more creative, generative state.
Well, I'm a guy, and so whenever I think second chakra, I always think sex. And so I hope I didn't get in trouble for saying that online, but sex, sensual, it must be the place where we connect. In order to really connect with somebody else and to be able to reach out and touch them requires a vulnerability. Unless you're reaching out and touching somebody with kind of a grip, on their neck or their shoulder. And then there's a sense of control or manipulation going on. Or somebody reaches it and pats you. Okay, that's okay. Yeah, good boy, or good girl, good, or... See, I took us right back into the world of pavement and smog.
Asphalt.
I'm throwing the frisbee yesterday with my son, and it's a really nice frisbee. But when it hits the pavement, and it goes around in its circle, before it stops, it grinds on the plastic and leaves little knots, little things. And my thought is, it no longer flies through the air with total liquid smoothness.
With the greatest of ease.
It's like a piece of sandpaper scraping on the sky. The asphalt and our city. In one sense, there's a thing called Agenda 21, United Nations, and there's a vision of the world that the Illuminati see. And the big business people that are trying to manipulate the world into what they want. But maybe they have some good pictures to it, too, which is we've got to get the world in a sustainable place. That's why many of the practices that came out of the United Nations dealing with sustainability are kind of coached. It's a double intended word. Agenda 21 is, well, we got too many people. They're spread out all over the place. Well, we got to bring them together into certain places, call those refuges, and put people together, living in communities where they can grow their food and feed themselves all in the same place, like a beehive. There was a man that did some drawings and philosophizing on how to reshape community, because our community was shaped by people like Ford building a car that could drive 20 miles to work and back every day. And so we developed this world of rural living. And we burned gas like crazy, and back then, we could just drive everywhere, and we drive food everywhere. We created the world like this. But what if we reshaped it and people grew their food where they live? And there's some trading, but not where we're relying upon Malaysia to make sure we got fruit to eat in the morning, because they've outsourced everything from America so that we don't even do anything. We got so used to laying around.
Well, we'll probably have to be centralized then in places where the growing is easy. Because growing up in the Midwest, close to the Canadian border, there wasn't a lot of natural fruit around. Of course, we had apples, but there were no such things as peaches,
Papaya,
mango, any of that. In fact, it didn't even exist unless it came in a can. All right. So, but every year we had great plums and great apples, but it was for a season. But I remember we would gather the apples and we'd put them in a cool, what do you call that? Cellar. We would put them in a cool cellar. And so they would maybe last for 4 or 5 months in the cellar. And as time went on, they would start to get, brown spots and a little bruised and that sort of thing. But we still could, eat them and or cook with them, which my mom was great at doing. But the fruit was not plentiful. It really was not plentiful. So it's a thought of you have to go where the growing's good then, if it's going to feed a heck of a lot of people.
Right. Or make it efficient where food is transferred. Look, there's a whole new world ahead. We're having to remake the world. It can't be based on an oil, petroleum-driven society.
Because it's finite.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, that too. It's going to run out. We're going to run out of that resource. Then we're not even going to be able to make plastics anymore. Then we're back to Stone Age, because the plastic will wear out, but it'll fill the oceans, and barely enough room for the whales to get around because we got so much garbage. So we're trying to remake the world to become more local, which means people are going to have to somehow find a way of being vulnerable, open to meet, greet, and communicate with their fellow human beings, and start really becoming more neighborhood conscious. Start becoming a volunteer. Because sooner or later, money's going to be gone. Or at least the system as we know it's going to be gone. It's going to fall to pieces because it was a sham anyway. It's a sham. So we need true barter. We need to have occupations that contribute towards the betterment of the whole for all of us. Instead of working at some place punching out engines that burn petroleum, we could be working in a packing place storing up all that fruit. You know what I mean? All right, well, I'm sorry we went into this direction of the world of the conspiracy.
Oh, we just barely graced it.
Turn
But
around.
you know, there may be a conspiracy, but then there's also what's going to be reality, which hopefully isn't just the conspiracy of us getting locked into slavery and having a repeat of building pyramids for Egypt for the next 100 years, where all of us just learn to pick up rocks and carry them and move them and sweat and don't wear many clothes and get whipped with barbed whips and get docked pay and barely have enough corn to eat that's genetically keeping us from having kids. So now we can't populate the planet anymore. Now we're just working till we die, and we know it's all over because the rich are making a fortune. Hey, they made $100 billion off of 100 million people working 12 hours a day for them. And none of the employees got anything except some worthless corn to make sure they stay sterile.
Okay.
Okay, now look. We point out the problem. We point out where there's pain. We point out the strategies or subsystems that are causing the bottleneck of energy and creative growth. And so I'm saying that soon I want to see, I hope it comes about, that the old system of greed and power pyramid disappears and we become a cooperative beehive of beings that can all interact. And through time, through a changing of the programming of what is popular, we'll get rid of the violent world and usher in something maybe a little more peaceful. Is it possible?
I think most people by nature, I really believe this, are actually good.
And want that.
And want that, and are cooperative. I think that we have some things going against us, such as food, which is so unhealthy for us that it can create, changes in brain chemistry that can make us not who we naturally are, and on and on and on. I could talk about that forever. But I believe that most people by nature are good and have a softness unless something else is really going wrong. And that's the way I like to look at life as well. Because sometimes to look at it in a negative fashion is just, over time, too harsh of a way for me to view a life here on planet Earth. I want to feel hope. I want to feel joy. I want to feel uplifted. I want to laugh. I want to be able to express and to be able to be free. And dwelling too much in the negative just eclipses that which could feel wonderful and joyful and radiant. And I'm not saying being a Pollyanna and with a head in the sand attitude, if I can't see it, then it doesn't exist. I mean being aware, but also making the choice in every moment, as much as you possibly can, to look at the other side, to look at the bright side, to look at that which is wonderful about our existence and our companionship.
You're listening to KBOO Radio, Portland, Oregon. I am Dan.
I'm Suzee.
It's been nice hanging out with you today.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.